Buenos dias on Cinco de Mayo.
Hey, yeah. I have to say, I enjoyed the information looking up, what is the history of Cinco de Mayo? And for me, because a lot of the stores carry the little skull figurines and paper plates with that on there and melamine plates so that you can have a party. And I, for a long time, was really confused, thinking that this was the Day of the Dead. I thought they had two, because I know the Day of the Dead is right after Halloween, which makes sense to me, kind of with the skull iconography and all of that. But
So there's lots of days of the dead?
no, there isn't.
It sounds like there's at least 3.
No, there, no. This is Cinco de Mayo is actually a celebration of a battle. The Battle of Pueblo took place on this date, May the 5th, 1862. While the United States was full on fighting the Civil War, there was a battle between the Mexican Republic forces at a town called Pueblo, which was on the way to Mexico City, which is the capital. That's the seat of power, Mexico City, Pueblo, not all that far. I don't know specifically how far. But the Republic forces took on a French army that was moving in to take over Mexico City. And so, apparently, the government of Spain, who controlled Mexico at the time, had borrowed a bunch of money from the French for over a long period of time. And the Spanish government was pretty much insisting that that be paid back by the government in Mexico. You can understand that thought processes, but they couldn't do it. And what had happened was the Empire of Mexico, which is different from the Mexican Republic. Now, this is, as I understand it, this is a quick research that I was able to do, just in the last day or so. And so, Mexican Republic, this is a liberal party controlling that. And from 1858 onwards until, I think, 1867 or something like that, Benito Juarez was the president of the Mexican Republic. The Empire of Mexico was, with the cooperation of the Mexican Conservative Party, was being run at that time by Austrian, as in Austria, Archduke Maximilian, who was essentially an oligarch who came to Mexico. Everybody came to Mexico. All the Europeans came to Mexico looking for riches.
So let me get this straight. Now, the French, did they post a job opening for, and then the guy from Austria got the job? Or
no, I think it's just who you know, and who's willing to take on the adventure. But under that oligarchic empire system, the Mexico City was able to make a lot of gains economically. They kind of got things established. They were doing a lot of public works and things like that. So they did get stronger under the oligarchic system. However, that is not what the people wanted, because it felt like this was sort of an occupation almost. And we have to remember that while the Spanish are not indigenous, they had been there since the 1500s. And so it's better the devil you know than the devil you don't know. And so this battle of
or the
Pueblo,
devil you know the longest, I guess.
This is Escobar. We've heard that name before. And he, with a band, let me look here so that I'm very specific, because I don't want to be telling people stuff that's not right. Let me look at my notes. Ignacio Zaragoza, not Escobar, Zaragoza. he had a band of about 3,791 men, and they defeated the French army who was marching to take over. The French had 5,730 men. From what I understand, the casualties on the Mexican side were pretty low, like around 50, something like that, probably give or take 10 lives, which sounds so callous now that I'm hearing myself say it.
I know.
But, and the French lost almost 500. So they turned back. The French turned back. Zaragoza was able to stop them in their tracks at this city of Pueblo, and they just left. They regrouped. The following year, they came back, and the second time, the French won. And they took over Mexico City from the Spanish rulers, we'll call it, for about 5 years. And so from like 1863 until 1867, 68, something like that, the French were in charge. And so then after that, there was another battle. This time, it was Juarez commanding the Mexican Republic troops, and he was the president of the Mexican Republic, and so he was in charge of this contest, I'll call it, and this time the Mexicans won. And so Cinco de Mayo is actually a celebration of the restoration of Mexican sovereignty.
Okay, so the date is really something.
Well, the date of that,
Just not what we thought.
it's May the 5th. That's the date of the Pueblo victory over the French troops.
Okay.
And then the next year, it didn't go so well for them. What's interesting to me, I was going through my books. I've said many times, I have a nice library here, which is kind of fun to go through because
Right in the studio. How handy.
yeah,
That's very handy.
it's very, very nice to have all of these books handy. And so I like to sit in the evening, especially sometimes the TV's on, sometimes there's music on or something like that in the background, and I thumb through the books and get ready to talk about whatever it is. That's why, I never have time to do deep, deep, deep research, and I have no degree in any of that. But this was really interesting to me because the books that I have on hand, a lot of them are about world festivals, holidays, things like that, because the lore for all of those traditional ones is so interesting. Well, this, I couldn't find anything. I couldn't find anything about Cinco de Mayo in a lot of my old books. And I mean, there were other Mexican, Central American holidays, not as many from this side of the pond as from Europe. But, part of that is just because their history is a lot longer than ours. And so, I thought, why is that? Well, I was trying to find that out, and I saw in a couple of places that the reason that Cinco de Mayo has become a popular holiday is because of beer companies.
No, really?
Yeah, Oprah had something up. She mentioned it, and I saw it in a couple other places too, where Corona and Modelo and some of the other beer companies really turned this into like a promotion. And so, it's a celebration of sovereignty, but it is not the remembrance of Mexican independence. That's September the 16th.
Oh, my goodness.
And it's not the Day of the Dead, even though I think that they needed decorations maybe for this. And I think so
So they borrowed it from the actual Day of the Dead in November.
I don't know whether it was a conscious thing or whether stores that sold that kind of stuff.
Oh, if it has to do with commerce, then yes, it would be.
Well, you need
an
decorations
absolute
if you're
plan.
going to be having a big party. Anyway, it's become quite a thing. And now, or lately, I don't know now, because there have been so many changes so quickly that I can't keep up. I won't even pretend that I can keep up. But it's a remembrance for people in this country of their Mexican heritage. It's less, for people in this country, it's less about the Battle of Pueblo and what the significance of that was, even though the result of that more or less galvanized the people of the Mexican Republic, different from the Empire of Mexico. Those are two different things. With the empire being, as you might guess, that's the oligarchy, that's all of these foreign investors who came here to make some money. That's so those are two different things. But in this country, then, it's more a celebration of Mexican heritage. Sort of like, I think you can draw parallels with St. Patrick's Day.
I guess, but I mean, there definitely anything you see on TV, for instance, about celebrations on Cinco de Mayo. It is sort of the Day of the Dead kind of theme.
Yeah, it does.
So,
It looks like it's so that's kind of a lot of confusion, and I will say that this is a fun holiday, and I thought maybe it had roots in like celebrations of spring, but I didn't see that. And it's also, this is very close to the Easter holiday, and Easter is celebrated very prominently, and the run up to Easter is very prominent in Mexican celebrations. So, long story short, 5 years later, they finally overthrew the Empire of Mexico. They captured Archduke Maximilian and had him executed. And then the Republic of Mexico essentially was born. While I was going through my books and things like that, I did find some interesting things. I've never really understood the significance of the colors or the coat of arms on the Mexican flag, which I think is interesting. Green is a symbol of like peace and freedom. The white is a symbol of religious freedom, which I like that. The red is a symbol of unity, or some people say teamwork. So you can look at it like that. And I think that's really interesting. And then in the center, sort of in the flag, you see an eagle with a snake in its mouth. And it has it's sitting on top of cactus.
ouch.
And apparently that was an old Aztec legend. And what it was they believed that when an eagle with a snake in its mouth was spotted atop a cactus, that it would be time to build a city, an Aztec city. And so they built what is now Mexico City. And so that was an Aztec city. And I think, wow, that's so interesting.
Well, I mean, what do you mean by Aztec? Because they would be long gone, sort of by then.
Well, no,
The
this was way
original
back,
Aztecs.
way back then. So,
Oh, okay.
very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, that is cool. Interesting. Okay, so I knew nothing about Cinco de Mayo except that it was actually the 5th day of May.
Yes, right after the 4th of May.
Oh, well, what's that?
You know what May the 4th is.
Be with you, too.
Yeah, that's right.
And all of you.
I think the idea that
Is this the segue?
I
Okay.
guess you changed
Proceed.
the subject. We'll try to get back
No,
to
I
it.
didn't actually. I said the 5th of May, and then you added the 4th to it.
Yeah, the day after the 4th. Hey, this has been kind of a fun few days. I mean, with Saturday being the Run for the Roses, the Kentucky Derby.
That's right, yeah.
And then yesterday was May the 4th, so Star Wars Day, essentially. And then today, Cinco de Mayo. So, wow, we're really on a roll for
Except
fun
my
stuff.
horse didn't win, so I was very disappointed. And all the other heavy metal heads out there.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, a lot of
Sandman.
them showed up.
Sandman. I think that was cool.
Yeah.
But the horse that won, now in connection with Cinco de Mayo, the horse that won, do you remember his name?
Sort of.
Sovereignty.
That's right, yeah.
Which, with Cinco de Mayo being a celebration of sovereignty, I think that's pretty fitting.
That sounds fishy to me. Somebody fixed it.
Are you one of those conspiracy theorists?
No, I can't say that word, you know.
No, you're not supposed to. That'll get you in trouble. But we're not. We're playing. Don't anybody that's trying to censor this. Don't worry about it.
Yeah,
we
we're
don't
just,
really
just
mean it.
kidding. Just
We're
kidding.
just mouthing off. That's it. Like that's what we do best. Anyway, May the 4th. I think that is very, very cool because when you think about the influence of modern storytelling, certainly the Star Wars saga is so pertinent in so many things that we do and say and think. And it is every bit, and maybe even more, valid than the folklore of times gone by. And so the thing with folklore that attracts me so much, that I love so much, is that the ancient tales, the old tales, are brought back to life by every person that repeats them, that tells their version of those same stories. And so because of television, because of the movies, our culture is very well steeped in the understanding of this particular storyline. The lore, the canon of it is pretty much understood by modern society, and not just here in the States, not just in proximity to Hollywood, but worldwide. Those stories have been told, they're well loved, they tap into the human experience. And if May the 4th is ever officially made a holiday, which I think it should be, kind of a modern reference to it, because all holidays, all it takes is a decree, and a decree and an agreement. I think the force be with you.
Yeah, the idea is great, but I'm not sure about the idea of making holidays out of something that began as a money-making venture.
Well,
because we'd be having a holiday every day.
Well, Cinco de Mayo, we're saying, as we understand it here in this country, was a money-making venture by companies that sell, liquid treats, I'll say. And
trick or treat.
Certainly this May the Force Be With You is a modern folktale, really. We don't think about it like that.
Yeah.
So
they had a whole series of productions about that with Joseph Campbell.
I thought that was fascinating.
And George Lucas, of course, was a big fan of Joseph Campbell and the source of a lot of his general concepts anyway.
I think Joseph Campbell's works are so amazing. If you're not familiar, he talks a lot about the concept of being a hero, or all the images that we see of a person that sort of spring from, the old tales. Villains. What does it take to become a villain, or the femme fatale, and all of these different archetypes. And you can recognize them. And he's very clear in what it takes. What are the markers of these particular roles, I'll say, in storytelling, in life itself. And I just love the idea that George Lucas was tied in with all of that. It's funny to me, how we have in Star Wars, you have the Sith Lords.
Mm-hmm.
The Sith, that word in Celtic terminology would be like the she. It wouldn't be the Sith, it would be called the she.
Yeah.
And they were usually females, like banshees.
Mm-hmm.
So powerful, scary, unwelcome. And I think, wow, they must have really, writing all of this, the research was done, but then kind of adapted to fit the story. In this whole concept of the Force, you're particularly interested in that sort of thing. The Force being, to put it in simple
science.
terms, the power of the mind to alter realities or to alter the status quo.
Well, I don't think that's the way that they perceived it in the Star Wars sagas, but it's closer to just an analog of a deity, really, I think. Way back then, I heard somebody say, "Oh, this new Star Wars, it's like Christian, and it's like because of the talking about the Force."
Mm-hmm.
And I think, well, I'm not sure where you're getting Christian from. I mean, God, maybe, but there was some sort of supreme power
That can alter things,
yeah,
right?
or you makes a connection between people and all that.
But there is a connection. See, that's the thing. The more we study things, the other day I was reading something about the fact that when there is a, celestial event, that plants sync up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The rates of sap flowing through them in whole forests. So, and certainly fungi, with all of their, I'll call it roots underground, that they're one thing as well.
Right.
And they're more and more they're saying that what happens to one individual affects the whole community.
Mm-hmm. And in terms of some of the physical things that they were saying, that the Force was being channeled, and not that Obi-Wan or any of them were doing this on their own, but that they were channeling this Force somehow to move things or create shields, and certainly for
push things back,
communications in a way, to sense things, that sort of thing. So that does kind of tie into the whole idea.
It's so fascinating with that as a premise, and I think it's captured the imagination of people everywhere. And if you celebrate the Force, essentially, I think that the next understanding of that, the deeper understanding of that, would be not so much a device used by a writer of movies, or good stories, but as an acknowledgement of an interconnection between human beings and everything else that lives.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely left the door open for different interpretations about what they meant by using that word, because a lot of people, that you're familiar with phrases like the force of nature and gravity being a force maybe and stuff like that.
Do you know there's debate about gravity being a force?
Oh, yeah, there definitely is.
Well, now, Newtonian physics, as I understand it, this is just objects which have mass attracting each other. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly. So, if you could look at that as a force, it would be sort of indirect in a way, if you think about it. But the word gravity itself, I think in Latin, you took Latin. I didn't, so correct me if I'm wrong. It comes from gravitas, which means
weight.
Weight, yeah. And actually, some of the best theories, I think, do say that it is the weight that's actually doing the phenomenon of gravity.
Not mass, just weight?
Well, yeah. You're
mass and weight.
Yeah, they're related mathematically, of course.
Okay.
And the greater the mass, the more the weight, and so on. And then, of course, density is in there too, which is tricky because you can see something that appears to be smaller and therefore less mass, but has more weight.
It's like my purse in your backpack.
Exactly.
One would assume that your backpack is heavier, but it's always my purse.
I always accuse you of trying to take moon rocks or something on vacation.
He
because
does. There's always a war.
So what do you got in here? My God.
Yeah, especially in those instances
Gee.
where I ask you to hold my bag.
Yeah, bloody hell. Then I'd say, here, try my backpack. You say, oh, man, this is so much nicer.
I offered to trade with him, but he never takes me up on it.
Right, yeah.
Anyway.
So they think that basically that, for instance, in the terms of using Earth as an example, it has certainly a large mass and a large weight. And one of the ideas is that it's sort of being held up by this grid work, this invisible grid work throughout the universe, and which is being bent by the weight of the Earth in this example.
Is that the curvature of space-time?
Exactly. And then, so what happens then is it creates kind of a conical pattern with the Earth in the middle of it. Like, if you've ever seen these things at the mall where you'd put a penny down there and it would spin around down this vortex? Mm-hmm. Yeah, why would you do that? I'm sure why people did. I did it, so I should ask myself.
I definitely would do that with my grandkids. Or my kids. We did it with the kids because it's fun to watch.
Mm-hmm. So that's kind of the mental picture. And then, so they're thinking that anybody that comes within the influence of this cone will be sort of, it's not really attracted, but it's just the curvature of space-time is actually making a little hole for it to fall into, in a way.
Is it like a spiral?
It's like a spiral.
Like a diminishing spiral, like a funnel.
So, yeah, that's right. So, anyway, you really can't say directly that that's a force, per se, if you see what I mean. It's just the shape of space-time that things kind of fall into.
So why would that not be considered a force? Is it just a consequence? Just...
I guess the consequence is not a bad word for that. Not at all, really. But it's complicated. And then there's the other theory that gravity is a wave, just like everything else is. One of the things logically is that if pretty much everything that exists that we can observe, at least, is fundamentally a waveform of some sort, then why wouldn't gravity be also? And there are some big installations. There's 2 in the United States, I think, that take up miles of space. I think that they need to see if they can detect gravity waves. And there has been a number of ones that they are pretty conclusively saying that it proves that gravity is a wave.
But wouldn't that become more spread out the further away from the object of mass? Yeah.
It would be everywhere, wouldn't it? I mean, it's just like a long string, like, you stretch out a long, let's say, garden hose or something, and you pick up one end and give it a little snap, and then, it tends to follow along that line.
But does it get wider? Does the distance between peaks get elongated? It
would be. It would tend to decay with distance. So it's a very, very small thing that they're trying to detect. And I think, if I remember correctly, it's called LIGOS, if you want to look it up, LIGOS. And very fascinating stuff there to try to come up with an additional theory about what gravity may actually be. I was
looking around, just thinking about the force and that sort of stuff. And I saw that there was even a new theory in 2009, which isn't that long ago. And I'm sure there's been more since. And so it is very hotly debated. Now, the one in 2009 says that it's got the same effect. They call it an emergent force. It's not a fundamental force. But other places say that gravity is a fundamental force. So,
well, it would be if this gravity wave theory is correct, then it would be fundamental. But you still couldn't really call it directly a force, I don't think.
Not like electromagnetic.
I mean, the real force is, with our experience here on Earth, if you fall off of something very high, it's not that the gravity. If you want to call that a gravity force at that point, you're gonna continue to fall until you hit something hard, which would be the Earth or whatever, And that's where the force happens, deadly force, often.
You mean just when you...
Smacking into something with a huge mass, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, interesting subject, though.
It is very interesting subject.
But in terms of Star Wars, back on track, I don't think that's what they had in mind with calling it the Force. It was more, I think, sort of the supreme knowledge and a supreme, maybe a being, but maybe just a collective. And there's a lot of hints in that direction, I think, during the movies.
Yeah.
Like when Obi-Wan, they were escaping, and he all of a sudden went quiet and closed his eyes and said, "There's been disturbance in the Force from the thousands of voices crying out," kind of thing.
Yeah. And I think that phrase, a disturbance in the Force, because of that movie, has become part of the vernacular.
I don't know why that just triggered a memory, which is completely off track here, but when we were somewhere, we were kind of living in an area where there was sheep all around us.
Yeah.
Do you remember what I'm talking about now?
Yes, but you tell it.
And they were just milling around like sheep will do. You know, not the brightest things, really. But all of a sudden, they just sort of organized, and they just started taking off in a certain direction, all very organized way, instead of just milling around like they usually do. And so, just to make a joke with the boys there, I said, "Oh my gosh, there's a disturbance in the fleece."
Yeah, I remember that. Though there would be, where we were living at the time, there was often disturbance in the fleece, and they would be around my one son.
Yeah.
They'd get up early in the morning, they'd be all bleeding out there. And
I took some video of that, and that's what I titled the video, "A Disturbance in the Fleece." I should see if I can find that. Maybe we'll put it on a short.
Hey, you were pretty lucky last week. This is also off topic, but this is a breakfast conversation for all intents and purposes, and
we never talk about breakfast. So.
No, we never do. No, you made me lose my train of thought.
There's a disturbance in your thought process.
Yeah, there is a disturbance in my thought process. I have been very stressed the last couple of days. You've heard me talk about Kelly the cat, the semi-feral cat. Well, we've learned to trust each other. We have a lovely relationship. But if I thought previously that she was losing her wild ways, I'm here to correct that, because she is not. Miss Kelly has the 4 kittens. We have an appointment for later this week to have the kittens spayed and neutered. Miss Kelly has devised every way she can think of to escape the screened patio that we have out there. She's ripped up the screen in 2 places, literally ripped it open, taken the kittens outside. You've heard me say the big deal is the owls and hawks during the day circle here, and there's a 2 nesting pairs of hawks not far at all from where our house is. And so that's a constant worry for me. My place looks terrible from the front. Kelly has ripped up the screens, which were nice and taut and properly installed. She's I don't know how she's done it, whether it's a combination of her claw and her teeth, but she's scraped holes big enough for her to get through, and she leads the kittens. She has this loud trill that she does, and they would follow her to the ends of the earth, which is nature. And I can't keep up. I just can't keep up. I have barricades. The door has to be barricaded completely. And by ripping this up, on either side of our screened room, there's some of those concrete blocks that have kind of a decorative shape in them. It's kind of like a flattened X. And the other day I was outside doing something, and I looked, and there's one of the kittens squeezing itself through the lower triangle of one of those concrete block X's and sticking its head out a hole that Kelly impossibly tore in that screen. So now I have duct tape all over the place. I've taped cardboard to it, but the tape doesn't really want to stick. I'm not sure. I mean, all of that's got to be replaced, and I'm not going to do it until after we finally get those kittens to their appointment. The local cat rescue place is helping us do that, and because we don't have a car, and just the whole process of that is just prohibitive, and we don't have a big network of family or friends here, and we're often gone, and in fact we'll be on the road here again pretty quick, and so this has to happen this week, and I have to have those kittens available. This morning, I last night before I went to bed, I absolutely barricaded every way that she could get out those screens. And then when I went to bed, I didn't sleep well because I'm listening, and I propped up like things that I would hear fall or possibly hear fall if she was trying to make another great escape. And sure enough, I came down this morning, no kittens in the screen room, no Kelly in the screen room. So I opened up the screen door, and like I said, I had it completely barricaded across there because I thought, I don't know how she's doing it, other than actually 3 different spots that she's torn that. I mean, this is a massive amount of screening that I'm going to have to fix. And so I look out, and there's Kelly and 2 of the kittens. And I was just sick, absolutely sick when I saw that. But I opened up the door and let Kelly in and the two kittens, and a couple seconds later, the 2 other ones came in. They all came bounding in like they'd had a fine time for themselves. And I can say that Kelly has wanted to teach them how to hunt. And that is a force of nature. That is the real force of nature. She brings them, the little lizards, the little newts, she brings them in. She'll set them down in front of the kittens, and they all come over to see. They're dead. She kills them. But they come over to check out what it is. I was telling last week about how she brought them a dead squirrel, and at another time she brought in a bird, but I disappeared that bird because I thought, with all this bird flu talk and stuff, I would prefer that Kelly steer clear of birds altogether, especially with the kittens. But oh my goodness, what a challenge that is to keep Kelly and those 4 kittens. Because now, today when I was out there later, I thought, I'm going to tape up everything. And you had that roll of pretty good duct tape. Mm-hmm. Yeah. You don't have as much as you used to. I'll just tell you.
I'm more concerned about not having as much intact screen as we used to.
Oh, I know.
We'll send her a bill.
Oh, my goodness. Well, see, that didn't occur to me that she would do that. I mean, I thought that even just any sort of visual barrier would be enough to stop her, but it isn't. Mm-mm. And that one of the little kittens, the one I call Midge, is a snowshoe Siamese, according to the cat rescue lady. And she's very pretty blue eyes and very soft mottled coloring and mostly white.
The lady?
Tan. No. The one I call Midge.
No.
Dave. For heaven's sake. Leave it to you.
You said the cat rescue
I know
lady,
what I said.
And then you said
take a leap.
She has
take a leap and figure it out. Anyway.
Well, I'm slow, you know.
It's morning. I looked, and there was little Midge in one of those concrete blocks, shoving her head as hard as she could against the screen. Kelly must have had another spot where that's what they had to do, is kind of lower their face so they didn't get their eyes poked or anything like that, and put pressure against the screen and then exit through one of those torn holes. So now I do have other screening. So today I'm going to get out a needle and thread, and I'm going to sew new screening over that. And I'm going to need strips to make sure that I can nail that down at the bottom and make it tight again. But the appointment for them is not until Thursday morning. And so I have, a lot of
Running a
hours twixt
cat
now and then.
penitentiary here. That's not
I
really what
know.
we planned.
No, no, no. I didn't imagine that it would be such a direct
Cat jail.
cat jail. Yeah, it makes me feel bad because that is their nature. And
Well,
it
they're
is
wild
nice to
animals,
see
yeah.
Kelly outside, especially because that's where she belongs.
All
I like,
cats are unchanged. Their DNA is unchanged. They're wild.
I think that's part of the reason why they feel kind of honored when they have a good relationship with a cat, because these are two very distinct species. And cats, because they're not really as fully domesticated as the dog is.
Right. Well, that was my point. Their dog's association with human beings goes way, way, way back, and they have indeed their DNA is different than it was, when it was way back when. But the cats, no, they're the same. The humans have not been able to influence them to that degree yet.
Well, Kelly, I love to bits. I love the kittens. And the cat rescue lady said that she can find homes very quickly for them, and that it's unlikely they will come back from their surgeries. And I will miss them terribly. I love the youthful energy. I love watching their tumbling. I love seeing their personalities begin to emerge. When they're really tiny, you see a kitten and it's not so specific. But it's been really delightful to get to know them. And this house is going to be so quiet, and not in a good way, for several days.
But it will be nice to be out of the jail business finally.
Yeah, that I'm going to like.
Yeah.
And if I I have to fix the screens, or why bother? Because this is a mosquito-prone area, and it's nice to sit down there in the evening or late afternoon when the skeeters come out. And so that is a job now that I have to do, and the duct tape isn't going to hold that.
No, that's
Plus,
very
it's
temporary.
unsightly. It's unsightly. And we're talking about yards and yards of screening that now has to be replaced on account of little Miss Kelly. It's been delightful, and she will still be around. She's going to come back
not
here, from what I
trapped.
understand,
No.
but not trapped. Well, we're going to rig up something for her so she can come and go as she wishes. But I don't think that Kelly could ever become happy being trapped. I just don't.
I don't think any cat is. That was the point I was trying to make. It's kind of cruel in a way, Some animal that has unchanged DNA from wild times is literally has to spend its whole life in a jail.
Yeah.
But that's just me.
Yeah, but I think interesting places like big old barns or big old industrial places where there's a lot of space to roam and a lot of nooks and crannies to investigate on an ongoing basis. I think they do well in those environments, and they certainly mankind has benefited from their nature, from their ability to hunt, because varmints reproduce rapidly and prolifically, and so cats certainly do keep that population down. Dave, we're almost out of time.
Oh, okay. The force of time.
Yeah, the unbeatable force of time. And that is the most precious gift we have, is time. And I will say, this weekend with the Kentucky Derby and May the 4th, and now today, these are all little things that we mark, and it is so pleasant. I truly enjoy it. And, it adds variety, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's right. It does.
Very cool. Anyway, count your blessings. There are many. And do something nice for you today, even just some tiny little thing, because it adds spice to life. And with that, we shall say goodbye, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Yep. Bye-bye.